So in this tutorial, what we're going to do is we're going to install the actual library of shows into iTunes. And I'm going to show you how to do it on a Mac and on a PC because there's a few differences between them. And I want to make sure that we're clear on exactly what needs to be done. One of the things that I think I should point out, however, is that the actual library folder, this is where all of the shows actually live, are inside of this one folder. And if I expand that folder here on my Mac side, you can see that there are all these other folders inside of it. And they're based upon the theme of the show. And so, for example, when you have a guest and it's Peanuts Hucko, or Hucko, you'll see him in there. Let's look under here under Billy May. Billy May has two shows that are all about him, and he's a guest in both of these shows, A Conversation with Billy May and Billy May, The Miller Years. So you'll find one or more shows inside of these folders. Now the reason that I organized them in this way is this is the way iTunes likes it done. So we've made it so that it's a simple matter of just dragging this folder into iTunes, and then it will know everything it needs to know about the shows so that you can even search for them using iTunes if you want. I should also mention that searching with iTunes, although it works, it's not nearly as accurate a search as using the Search and Play app because, well, we designed the search on there specifically for helping you to find shows that you're looking for. But you can also do the search in iTunes. So we're going to look at both. We're going to start off here with the Mac side, and then we'll jump over to the PC side and look at the differences between them. So let's get started here. I'm going to go ahead and launch iTunes on the Mac first. So there's iTunes. Bring this up a little bit. Now this is a brand new version, a brand new empty version of iTunes. I haven't yet added any music to it at all. You may already have some of your stuff in here. And what I'm going to show you how to do, there are two methods that you can use for telling iTunes about the Swing Thing library. In one method, when you drag this folder right here over here to where it says music on the library, if I just let go of that, I'm still holding down the mouse, but if I just let go of it, it would immediately copy the shows from the USB flash drive that I shipped it on. It would pull a full copy of those over and put them on your hard drive on your Macintosh. Now normally that's probably a good way to go because if the shows are copied over, then you can, once they've been copied over, you can remove the USB flash drive that I shipped it on. You can stick that in a safe place, and then if you need it later on, you'll have it. If you want instead not to copy the shows, the actual shows, into iTunes, you can do that, and we can tell iTunes that although we want you to index the contents of the USB flash drive, don't actually make a copy of those shows onto the computer. Using that second method will save you space on your hard drive, but you will have to have the USB flash drive plugged in whenever you're using Swing Thing for iTunes, or for that matter, iTunes, and you want to listen to one of the shows off of the USB flash drive. So let me show you the difference between these. Now I explained to you that all you have to do is click and drag the Swing Thing library for iTunes folder over music, and it will just start to load it. But if I don't want to actually copy them over, what I have to do is go into iTunes Preferences, and we're going to make one little change. So you go under the iTunes up here, and you click on Preferences, and then go over to the Advanced tab, and there you'll see the second checkbox that says Copy Files to iTunes Media Folder when adding to library. That's the default setting. And with that box checked, when we drag that folder over into iTunes, it's going to actually make a copy of everything. It's going to duplicate what's on the flash drive in the iTunes Music library itself. So, that's about a 64 gigabyte file transfer. And if you've got room on your hard drive, that's probably the best way to go. If your hard drive is near full and you're worried about filling it, overfilling it, then what you can do is go into the preferences, click on the advanced tab like I did, and then uncheck this box. Now, it won't affect anything that you've already put into iTunes, so you don't have to worry about that, but it will affect what happens next. So I'm going to go ahead and uncheck that, and I'm going to click OK. So now what we'll do is we'll just grab this folder and drag it over and let it go. Now it'll immediately start to index everything that's sitting over on your USB flash drive, and it will make up a small record about each one of the shows, and it will store that on the Macintosh hard drive. Only a few megabytes worth of information. And then that way, whenever we want to listen to a show, you will have to plug in the USB flash drive using this particular method, and then you'll be able to search in here. So let's give this a chance to complete. I'll just pause the movie and we'll come back and see what happens when we're done. Actually, what I'll do is, better yet, is I'm going to take a look on the PC side while the Mac side is doing its work. I've got what's called a virtual PC on my Mac, which means I can run Windows software inside of this window. So we're actually looking inside of Windows 8 here. And you'll notice that in Windows 8, there's, again, we're looking at the Swing Thing library for iTunes, the same exact thing that we're looking at up here on the Mac, but here on the PC is how it shows up. And when I look inside the Swing Thing library for iTunes, you'll see that the everything there is laid out just the same way. Again, we're going to want to copy these over into iTunes. Now, before we can do that, we need to install iTunes on your PC. And I've included a link right here to download iTunes from Apple and install it onto your PC. So you have to do that first. And so I'm going to go ahead and double click that now. And then it's going to take us in the web browser over to the Apple website, and here's the download button right here. You do not have to enter an email address into this field, so unless you want to have Apple send you a little bit of spam mail once in a while, I just leave that blank. It's not required. Just go ahead and click on Download Now, and as you can see down here, it's now downloading the iTunes installer. And as soon as that's done downloading, we'll just give it a second here to finish. We'll simply click on this down here, or you may have to go to your downloads folder depending on what browser you're using. In this case, I'm actually using the Chrome browser, but if you're just using the default browser that comes with Windows, go to your downloads folder when this is done, and then you'll find the setup file, and just go ahead and click that. And it will pop up the normal security warnings, so just go ahead and click Run to allow it to continue. And then you can read through the information here, and then we're just going to click through using the Next button. Just click Install, and it'll put it in. And it's just asking if you're sure you want to do it, so say yes. And so now it's installing iTunes on your PC. So for now, let's put this away. We'll come back to this here in a little bit. And we've been copying everything over into iTunes, and it looks like it all came in now. And you can see all these individual show segments here. Now, the best way to look at these in iTunes is to click on My Music. That way you'll be able to see entire shows. So this is a show, and this is a show, and this is a show. And when you click inside one of these, it'll show you all of the segments that go into the show. And you can just click the play button here anytime you want to do, to play the show. You can also do a search up here. Let's try a couple of searches. Let's look for Miller, as in Glenn Miller. And, here you'll see some albums and some, they listed by album and by artist, and you can always get more by just saying to show more. And then whenever you click on one of them, it will open it up here. And now you can see that it opened it up, and there are the segments of the show, and you can just click play here or here to start playing. Now, with the one thing that you want to remember to do after you have copied the shows over to iTunes, and if you went into the preferences and unchecked that box so that whatever when we copied this in, it would only copy a reference. Oops, wrong thing. We now want to go back to the Advanced tab, just like we did before, and now we can recheck the box that says Copy Files to the iTunes Media Folder when adding to Library, because that's the normal way it's done, and then that way any new music that you may want to add will be put in the proper place. So just remember that unchecking this box before you drag that folder in to iTunes with all of the shows will not actually make a copy of them, but will simply memorize where all of those are located on the USB flash drive, so that when you have iTunes launched and you have the flash drive plugged in, you can play the shows the way I just described down here. If, on the other hand, you didn't uncheck this box at all, then when you copy everything over, it would take longer because it's actually going to be copying 64 gigabytes of shows over onto your computer. And once that's done, then everything will appear just the same way as it did here. In other words, it will allow you to do the searches just like before, and the main difference in that method is that you can then put the USB flash drive in a safe place and leave it there and remember where it is in case you ever need to reinstall this stuff later on. Okay, let's go back over to the PC side now. Okay, so we can see that iTunes is done installing. This checkbox, if you check it, will launch iTunes when you click the Finish button. Let's go ahead and do that. And, you know, the first time you install the software, you have to agree to Apple's terms, so click Agree. And we'll go ahead and close this web browser. We don't need this open now. Okay, so there's iTunes on the PC. Looks just like it does on a Mac. Now they're asking down here, do you want to agree to share details about your library with Apple to see artist images, album covers, and other related information in your library? And normally I would agree to that. It makes it very convenient. If you put some music on here, the iTunes software has the ability to look at music you have and then make other recommendations based on tastes similar to that kind of artist. So it's kind of a nice feature they have. I'm going to go ahead and click no thanks, but that's only because this is a demo version and I'm not going to worry about that. And then what we're going to do now, just like we did before, is we're going to want to add this show. I would click here on Playlists so that I can see this little music thing over here. And before I actually do this, the one thing that I do want to do is I want to go into my preferences for iTunes on the PC. Gosh, I don't remember where that's kept. It's right here. Okay. So you just click this little box up here in the corner like I did. And then you can choose Preferences. And then you want to go over to the Advanced tab. Normally this would be checked. And if you leave that checked, when you copy the music into iTunes, it will actually duplicate. It'll pull a copy of everything off of the flash drive. It'll leave it on the flash drive too, but it'll copy it over and put it on your hard drive. If you don't want to do that, just uncheck this box. Then you can drag the music folder in as we did before. And then after it's all done, then you can come back into the preferences and recheck that box so that any music that you add from any other source later on will go into the right place. I probably repeated that enough. I'm sure you've all got that by now. So for now, I'm going to uncheck that box. I'll click OK. And now what we can do is, let's pull this down a little bit here so we can see what we've got. So there's the Swing Thing library for iTunes. Again, I would just drag that over. You'll see that this box gets a little highlight around it. And then I would just let it go. And now that we're doing that, this should be copying them all over, and it is. So, the process of doing this doesn't take nearly as long as when it's actually pulling copies of the files. But since all it's really doing in this case is looking to see what's on the flash drive and building an index internally so that Swing Thing will know where to find it on that USB flash drive when you want to play that music. So I'll go ahead and pause for a moment, let this finish, and then when it's done, we'll look at the end result. Okay, now it's done. Okay, so we click over here on My Music, and now you can see, just like we saw on the Mac side over here, all the shows in iTunes on your Windows machine. And so those are the two methods that you use. Just remember that once you have completed copying everything over, and if you uncheck that box in the preferences, if you go back to the preferences, go back to the Advanced tab, and then reset this checkbox. That way, any future music that you add from CDs or from any source that you get it from will actually be copied into your computer's hard drive the way it normally should be. We only unchecked this because I wanted to show you that if you wanted to use the USB flash drive as the source for the music when iTunes is playing, uncheck this before you do the add, and then check this again when you're done. And that's basically all there is to it.